Thank you, DJ, Jessica, and Jeff. We're going to move on to the next segment, and now you have to listen to me. I'm going to talk a little bit about our 2021 technical initiatives. You've heard about that briefly from several people earlier this morning. I'm going to go into a little more depth on the process, as well as what we have prioritized in some of our action plans. So first off, let me just recap how we launch new projects. This is old news to most of you. We're a very similar open source organizations. New projects are socialized by members of the community to build interest, look for collaboration partners, and eventually a project is proposed and put forth and chartered and assigned resources and becomes an official project. Within OCP, we do also work with our board of directors, and they may identify specific projects, typically strategic in nature, that they wish to launch and support, and so they can do that. This project works really well, and as DJ covered, our IC is very involved with the projects and really driving the results and monitoring the results of that and making sure that they have all the resources that they need and the foundation and leadership support. In addition to that, we also felt that there was some new challenges and opportunities that may be falling outside of the scope of these existing projects. Things that were not necessarily being addressed today. They may represent particular challenges that a company is working on or some emerging opportunities within the market. So in 2019, we launched a series of activities to identify these future opportunities. This led to a list of technologies. We prioritized and actioned those in 2019, and Jessica just reported out on the status of those top projects that we identified. We went through a similar process again this year to set our 2021 plan, and we made some enhancements to that process. We reached out to Omdia. They're the market research organization that we've worked with for several years now. We asked them to help identify emerging opportunities as well as grade us on our priority list from last year. The good news, we did a really good job identifying the top 4 opportunities that Jessica and DJ just reported out on. There are a couple of they did shine a spotlight on a couple of new areas. And in the next few slides, I'll cover our top 5 priorities that the foundation and the IC is planning to act on in 2021. I'm going to present all 5 of these. They're not in any particular order. They don't reflect the priority or the importance. I think they're equally important, and we're planning to address all of those. We do have a longer list, and as opportunities arise, we'll continue to reprioritize and look for opportunities to go after that longer list. So anyway, here's the list of the 5 that we're working on right now. So we're going to start off with integrated solutions. This made our list in 2019. I think the work we did with Omdia simply added an exclamation point behind this one. Adoption activities scored really high in the Omdia market analysis. And this really was an example of how valuable that external review process was for us for this year. Much of our existing OCP recognized products can be made easier to purchase by non-hyperscale customers. These are mainstream tier 2 cloud providers that either sell cloud services or provide cloud services for their own internal customers, typically being large enterprise. And they want to run a pre-certified software stack on it. So our focus will be on looking at commercial software stacks, enabling these stacks on OCP hardware with the intent of delivering to enterprise companies and tier twos a vanity-free hardware solution that's integrated with a few basic software stacks. Now, we actually had an opportunity to, through Omdia, they identified 4 or 5 specific solution stacks, and I won't go through those in detail, other than to say they had some solutions for enterprise, for cloud. They had some network stacks, and a little bit to my surprise, they identified integrated security stacks as an opportunity as well. And so Steve Helvey from the foundation is going to work with our channel partners and other partner organizations. Jeff talked about that earlier. Those partner organizations, we'll work with them and identify and develop some of these hardware, software solution stacks. That'll be coordinated with those organizations as well as with our own internal project team. So you'll hear more about that in the coming year. The other area was sustainability and circular economy. This linear model of take, make, and throw away has reached its physical limits. Each year, we are taking more resources from Earth than the Earth can support, and we need to fix that. There are some key elements of sustainability and circular economy that we can implement. Design practices, for one, we can make it easier to use sustainable material and to recycle that material. We can work on a sustainable embedded software, which really allows that equipment to be able to be used in a secondary market or tertiary market. We can design the equipment for refurbishment and remanufacturing, and also look at the security aspects and make sure that we have a platform that continues to be secure as it passes from one owner to the next. Now, we've already started a lot of this work effort. If you've been involved in the Open System Firmware Group, obviously they're looking at this redistribution challenge with both licensing and content. A lot of work that can be done in the server group, recycled materials and design. And then obviously a security group is going to play a big role in this secure redistribution, as well as refurbishment and remanufacturing, all of which are necessary to enable this circular economy. So in 2021, we plan to coordinate some of these activities. And we're even thinking about adding a 5th tenet, which would reward support from our members and contributions around that effort. So today we have 4 tenets. We're thinking about adding a 5th tenet. So expect to hear more on that in the coming months. Next area was on data center facilities. Now, workloads are getting more complex, and we're using a lot more hardware accelerators. A few years ago, we would deploy a server that typically drew 400 to 500 watts of power. Now we're deploying these appliances that are filled with 700, 800 watt accelerators. We're putting as many as 8 into those accelerators into this box, along with all the other memory and other devices that take up power. These are 8,000 watt plus boxes. We're putting those into racks, and we're easily hitting 50,000 watts or more. That presents a cooling challenge as well as power delivery. So in our ACS, or Advanced Cooling Solutions group, we've been focusing on the harmonization of advanced cooling techniques and the harmonization of the equipment and how we work with the racks and even just coming up with ways to the metrology in which we talk about some of the key features. That is really insufficient. What we need to do is, and by the way, I don't want to downplay it. They've done a lot of really good work, and a tremendous number of companies that are involved in this effort. We're seeing solutions coming out, but we also need to have a facility that can accommodate that. And so there's actually a harmonization effort that needs to take place at the facility level so that we can accelerate the availability of data centers that support this liquid or immersion cooled equipment. What's interesting about this particular technology focus is that it ties in really pretty nicely with the sustainability and circular economy, because liquid cooling will have a significant impact on energy conservation and water conservation. So therefore, it's no surprise that it scored a really high in our prioritization this year. Along the same lines, looking at the data center and the facility itself, again, kind of dovetailing on some of the work that we've done with the security project, we now recognize is that the device and the systems that control and monitor our data centers are increasingly at risk of the same types of cyber threats. And these cyber threats can affect the availability of services, and in worst case, can take down the data center's critical equipment. So there's an opportunity for us to drive a marked increase in the security of the data center systems. It can span from simply attestation of the equipment, how we do firmware upgrades and boot that equipment. It can get into some of the security of the feature of the facilities itself, security risk during the construction phase. We can talk about reliability and operational reliability. We certainly need to look at commissioning and decommissioning of equipment and the best practices around that, and that the chain of command of that equipment as it moves from one supplier through the transportation system, into the data center. And so there's a lot of different ideas that are being percolated here. These are all represent opportunities for us to put our heads together and come up with some best known practices that we can share with the industry. Another area that was really high in both the Omdia market research as well as internally in our prioritization is the growing complexity of AI workloads. And I can then throw machine learning in there as well. The general consensus is that in order to solve complex problems, that we really need a multidisciplinary design approach. We needed to have the software engineers and the hardware engineers working together to design these solutions. And when I say software engineers, it's not just the embedded software and the operating system guys, but it's the guys really writing the AI algorithm. So we all need to work together on this to figure out how we simultaneously break down the bottlenecks in this equipment. We are predominantly a hardware organization. So we need to expand our community to include the researchers and the specialists into our community to become part of this collaboration. We plan to do this by working across the industry, using our industry contacts, but also really reaching out into academia. And I'll speak to that specifically in a later slide. So what I've just covered is our top 5 priority areas. There's more on our list. We will look for interested companies and interested parties and opportunities to work not just with these 5, but with the others that we identified. And as always, we're always revisiting that list. We started this process in 2019. We revisited in 21. In 20 this year, and then we'll implement plans in 2021. And you can expect to see us continue to do this on a 12 to 24 month cycle. So let me talk about some of the plans. So our priority list was just finalized a few weeks back. We haven't had a tremendous amount of time to ratify the plans for everything I just talked about. But we did get some head start on some areas, and we have some directional ideas on how to solve these. So first off, integrated solutions. We really made significant progress in 2020 on the integrated solutions. The research from Omdia pointed to very specific recommendations. Expect to see focus on those 4 recommendations. respect to circularity and sustainability, like I mentioned, possibly a new tenant, as well as working with the various project teams to give focus and priority to that new tenant in the future. We also launched, as part of our data center facilities group, a sub-project. It's called Advanced Cooling Facilities. It's recently launched. You'll hear more about it this week. And that group is really focused on the facility side of immersion and liquid cooling. We also have an opportunity to leverage our OCP Ready program, which is, again, launched a couple years ago, and we're starting to see companies line up and data center operators line up behind that and seeking that recognition. So that's an opportunity to use that as a carrot. And we actually have this group, this ACF group, that's going to be able to focus on the scale out of immersion and liquid cooling. On the data center facilities security side, we are right in the midst of launching a new project. We've identified interest from a couple of companies. You'll start to see more on that this week, and invitations to get involved. And again, the whole idea is harmonize the data center facility opportunities with the work that's going on already within the security project work streams. And when I say harmonize it, I mean take what we've learned about IT equipment and say, can we apply those same BKMs to the industrial control systems, just as an example. So you're going to see more work and a project team launched on that. With respect to the co-design and looking at how do we solve this complex AI workload challenge, I mentioned we want to extend the collaboration community to address that workload. And actually, we really want to extend it to address other challenges that we have coming up. So I have a slide to talk about that. Now, this morning in the initial keynote from Rocky, he mentioned that our Future Technologies Symposium has grown. It's matured to the point where we now have a tremendous pool of both academia and private sector researchers that are participating in this symposium. So in 2021, what we'd like to do is really formalize that collaboration, bi-directional plans. And Dirk alluded to this earlier this morning. So first off, challenges that we identify by our leadership team can get prioritized, and we can actually send that up to the Future Technologies community in the form of a call for papers, or even a very focused event agenda for a future symposium. So we recently did this with the topic of reimagining collaboration. That was a symposium topic that we held a few weeks ago. Had a really interesting set of speakers that talked about how their companies are reimagining collaboration in this COVID-19 environment. So that's just an example of how we're able to use that community to work with us and help us solve some of these both opportunities and challenges that were identified. So expect to see more formalized two-way communication with the FTS community. Secondly, is our FTS community does present papers, and it's possible that those papers could have enough interest that we want to actually create a new project from that. And the reason for doing that is we'd like to get those researchers involved with people that are directly involved in design and deployment of solutions. And we want them to participate together on project teams. And so the notion is that we actually create that collaboration. We take these ideas, we bring it to the IC in the form of a proposal of a new project, and we extend that community. So we have our existing community of collaborators working with academia and the researchers. So again, this is another example of that two-way process between our existing projects and the symposium community. So that's just a brief look into this extension of the collaboration community. Again, this is fairly new. we're working through some of the details, and you'll see a lot more plans that come out of this in the next few months. With that, I'm going to wrap up this session and be available to take a few questions before we get our morning yoga break. So anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening this morning, and I'll be available to take some questions.